David Silverstein, who is Global CEO of BMGI, joins us now to talk about how a business plan can be turned into a reality. Morning to you, David. It's, I think, the first time in the studio, certainly while I've been in the studio, that you've come. What brings you here and what do you do?
You know, I've got a global management consulting firm. I'm here visiting my office, my clients. I was here with Standard Bank yesterday, heading out to Sasol Mining this afternoon.
So those are your two major clients here?
Those are two of our larger clients in South Africa right now, yes.
Good. Now, you're talking about making theory into practice, plans into practice. I mean, this is what business is about.
Right.
Governments need to do it too, and I think in South Africa we have a particular problem with lots of big plans, partly due to a liberation movement coming in with ideals of fixing the past, and very difficult to put into reality. What are some of the things? Let's start with the private sector. A Standard Bank, a Sasol, two world-class companies in their own right. What are the sort of things you're telling them?
Well, so, you know, the core of my business is helping them drive improvements in the business, improve process and so on. But a big part of the way we approach things, maybe different than some other consulting firms, is we really want to get the people in the company engaged. One of the things I've been talking about a lot while I've been down here is a new book I've written titled How to Become an Elite Mental Athlete, which is really a metaphor between what elite athletes do to take care of their bodies and elite thinkers really ought to be doing to take care of their minds. So if you think about a company that hires knowledge workers, what I tell even the people who work for me is that I didn't hire you to do a job. What I do is I rent your brain from you for 8 or 9 hours a day. And so you need to bring the very best brain possible to work with you every day. And most people don't know what that means. So we know what it means to diet, we know what it means to exercise. We've spent the last 20 or 30 years telling people to take care of their bodies, but people don't know how to take care of their mind in order to get the most out of it.
What are the sorts of things that they do that they shouldn't do, in the same way that you talk about the body? Don't eat too much sugar, or don't eat sugar at all, according to some views. Exercise 3 times a week, those sorts of things. What are the things, what are the don'ts and do's of mental agility, health, keeping your mind in training?
Well, you know, if you think about what an elite athlete does, so one of the people I use as an example is Usain Bolt. Everybody knows him from the last Olympics. Usain Bolt wakes up every morning saying to himself, I'm the fastest man in the world. Yet he's trying to figure out how to get faster every day. And you ask yourself, why don't knowledge workers, why don't the heads of billion-dollar corporations think of themselves as elite athletes and how to get better every day? So if Usain Bolt, he doesn't say, let's go out for a jog today in order to get faster. He says, I'm going to work on my endurance muscles and my fast twitch muscles and my time off the starting blocks. And I know exactly how far I'm going to go before I pick my head up because I'm going to be more aerodynamic if I keep it down. Well, the CEO going into a billion-dollar negotiation ought to also be thinking about, is my short-term memory where it needs to be, and my long-term memory? Did I get enough sleep last night? If Usain Bolt can tell you exactly what he ate last night and what he drank and what time he went to sleep to get ready for a race, why aren't we doing the same thing to get ready for that billion-dollar negotiation? Our ability to recall something from 3 years ago, our ability to pick up on something that we heard in that meeting can be worth hundreds of millions of dollars. And yet instead we think it's important to go out socializing and drinking.
Or just to work hard at the office.
That's right. I mean, a lot of supercharged executives today still pride themselves on how little sleep they get. You hear people say it all the time, I only need 4 or 5 hours of sleep. And so I think a real important part of this is simply learning about our brains the way we've learned about our bodies.
I work a little bit in your field as well, talking to companies, and one of the things I say to the chief executives, depending on the company and the chief executive, is, what are you doing that no one else in the company can do? And one of them is thinking.
Right.
And the danger is that they are very good precisely because they love the business, they work hard, and they love being immersed in the detail. And they need to step back to do those things, don't they? That no one else, including their deputy, including the chairman of the company, is actually going to do.
That's right. You know, I gave a talk just across the street here at the Hilton yesterday, and I asked the people that were there the same question I've asked now of thousands and thousands of people around the world. I'll go around in a room, I'll ask people, where do you do your best thinking? And somebody will say in the shower. Somebody else will say when I'm out on a run, on the train, in the car. I like to do it on the plane. Never once, thousands of people I've asked, has anybody said, in the conference room with my coworkers? Never has anybody said, sitting at my desk going through my email. And so you're absolutely right. The need to step back, we need to think of that time that we take off, not as time that we're not working, but time that we are working. I tell the people, even who work for me, that if I can get you to take sleep more seriously, your brain does most of its work between 10 p.m. and 6 a.m. if you get more sleep, it's like doubling the brain power of the company, and I don't have to spend a nickel hiring anybody extra.
Are there things in South African companies that are peculiar to us in the culture, the way chief executives, the way executives do things that are different to elsewhere? Because in many ways we think of our best companies as being comparable to American companies or British companies, but they're not the same, are they?
They're certainly not the same, but I actually think companies here in South Africa do a great job of looking overseas to more developed countries for lessons. So I don't find a lot of differences at the executive ranks. What I do find is perhaps the way companies in South Africa engage with their workforce is a little bit different. If you think about the history of the company, I think a lot of companies are still built on a culture of mistrust. There's still a lot more micromanagement of the workforce. And so, while the executives may be looking to learn from their peers elsewhere and do the right kind of things, I don't think companies do as good a job of now allowing the same freedoms and flexibilities to their workers to think.
We've got three of your identified areas there: uncertainty, globalization, innovation. That comes from your research?
Yeah, I think that comes from a paper that's on my website right now, where I talk about the top 10 problems that companies are facing. And those three right there: uncertainty. Uncertainty, obviously, uncertainty has been a buzzword since the global economy crashed in 2008. And there's so much overmanagement of the economies of the world going on right now that the ability to predict what's going to happen in the future and really to understand the dynamics of what's going on in the world. I mean, we've got in the US and Europe, even in China now, Japan, we're just printing so much money that normal economic behavior doesn't even work. So there's this heightened sense of uncertainty everywhere. And to deal with uncertainty, our brains need to be that much sharper because we need to be thinking through so many more different possibilities, so many more different possible futures than we ever did before. Our ability to predict the future. So that's a really big one. What else do we have up there?
We had globalization, but that's an obvious one.
Sure, that's obvious. And the third?
I can't remember.
I can't remember what we put up there on the screen.
What I wanted to ask you was, if you've got a man who's a Canadian, I think, running Sasol.
Right.
So he's come in from outside. When you work with guys like this, Standard Bank's an interesting one, and I'm sure you won't tell me about this, but we ask why two joint chief executives? Why didn't they choose one of them? So that's a particular issue for Standard Bank. No comment on that?
I don't have any comment.
No, I thought so. But you work with them. Is it easy to change behavior? Or do personalities stay in their ruts? They pay you, but they stay the same.
Sure. Certainly there's a lot of resistance to change. What I don't find is there's not a lot of resistance to change among individuals, and I think that's a big mistake we make. I hear people say it all the time, our people are resistant to change. And I'll go out there and I'll talk to the employees all across the company, and I'll go back to the executives and I'll say, I couldn't find them. Who are all these people that are resistant to change? And what happens is you get this organizational inertia. So it's very hard to change the collective. But each individual, I actually find, is usually a whole lot more open to change than we give them credit for. And so that if we allow, what we find is people aren't resistant to change, but people don't want to be changed. So if we can let people become part of the change, and I do think that's one of the things that's missing here in South Africa, is engaging the workforce and letting them be part of driving the change. And humans like diversity. They like to learn new things. But that organizational inertia, especially in companies with tens of thousands of people, that's where the resistance really has come from. It's not coming at the individual level.
Is that the biggest obstacle that you face, to get people doing things in a different way, that just they don't want to be changed?
The people do not want to have change dictated to them. That's right. They want to make part of the change. But the other thing, of course, obviously, and we've got this in the United States as well, is government regulation, certainly. This constant creative tension between we want to make our companies more efficient, but we don't want to lose jobs. Well, making companies more efficient usually means we need to lose jobs, and we need to let those jobs pop up somewhere else. And there's this constant tension in the system, and I absolutely sense that here in South Africa in a really, really big way. Is companies are trying to do the right thing, but they get a lot of pushback even from the government.
A friend of mine, Ian Furr, who runs the Sorbet chain, I don't know if you've come across it, it's a beauty chain, and he says he doesn't employ eye specialists. An eye specialist is one who says, this is about me. Right. He wants people who are about the whole company, and maybe that's another way of thinking about it. Thanks to David Silverstein. We can't talk more, though we'd like to. He is the global CEO of BMGI.